Welcome back, Chain Gang. This is the 4 Chains, and today is Top 5 Friday. Today's Top 5 Friday list is the Top 5 Habits of Great Parents.
So why are we qualified to give this particular video a shot? A couple of reasons. What gave us the idea is we were at a graduation party for the people this video is dedicated to, which is Craig and Heather, and they said something really nice about our influence on them as parents because of how well our daughters did, and their children are growing up fantastic. So if we could help them out, we'd really love to help you out. And so that's why we're doing this. But before that, we want to give a shout out before we get to number 5, which is single parents, right?
Right.
I don't know how I could do this without her. It would be a million times more difficult, and just really bless you for what you do and the effort you make. Being a parent is very difficult. One of the things that people tend to overlook is that the approximate cost of raising a child is $15,000, I want to get it right, so I'm reading it, $775 a year. That doesn't sound like a whole lot. I can tell you that that assumes that there will be no private schools, that it will be all public education. It only goes to 18 and does not include college. But that does add up to $283,950 to raise a kid with no private education prior to college and not including college. And there's
or trade school or wherever something else might happen other than college.
Absolutely. And you know, that is a tough road to hoe, and so, you know, props to you. We certainly know about a lot of famous people that were raised by single parents and did a great job. You want to list some examples? Or
Barack Obama, Tom Hanks, Alicia Keys,
Larry Bird, Shaq, LeBron. I realize these are all basketball players. We had just done the basketball list, so I apologize for that. So let's just dive right into number
Muhammad.
5. Yeah, sure.
A lot of historical figures as well. Important people. Number 5 is to choose the right partner, and there's a lot to be said for this. That's why we prefaced it with the piece about single parents. However, Jim, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, I do want to say that although, you know, we'll put some studies up from the Princeton study and some others we've looked at about the challenges that are faced by children growing up to single parents. It's actually worse statistically if they grow up in a toxic, well, I want to use the exact, toxic conflict-ridden marriages. I want to use the exact quote that Princeton used.
Not even marriage.
Yes, well, of course,
parents
yes.
Cohabitating and it's an abusive or highly dysfunctional situation. That's actually worse than being raised statistically by a single parent.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, it's when you decide to bring a child into this world, you're not just deciding to bring a child in this world, you are making the decision as to who the other parent of this child is going to be. And that is a big and very, very important distinction. I do want to make for those of you who know me, I do want to make I want to make full disclosure here, as some of you know. I mean, I was the product of conflict-ridden, I guess you could say, toxic marriages, but I did suffer from it. I've come out okay, but you know, all of the things that you would expect, including like getting expelled from school and bad behavior, and she knew me back when I was suffering from some of the consequences of that.
And that's why we didn't date until way, way, way after that.
Yes, that's true. You know, she doesn't want me to say she was out of my league, but definitely so. But you know, I'm kind of like a unicorn in and of the fact that I have been thinking about essentially making this list since I was 5 years old. I had a lot of time to think. When I was a kid, we didn't have video games. We only had 3 channels on the TV. I have been thinking about what I would do if I became a parent since I was 5 years old, in a very serious, long way. And if I wouldn't have been able to found somebody like this to raise a child with, I wouldn't have raised a child at all. And, you know, for those of you that watch the channel, I think you know that I hit a home run, obviously, in choosing you know, the person to raise my children with me, and she is a better parent than I am, and you know, I think that I'm a pretty good parent.
And I'd like to add something then there. Usually we kind of loosely discuss what we're going to talk about in these videos, and then I usually go off the rails, and so this is going to be one of those times. I would say for those people who turn out to be successful and good people who were raised by single parents, I think in so many cases it's because even though that parent didn't have a partner, they probably had a really great support system, like their parents, grandparents, neighbors, close-knit friends, something in the community that would serve the purpose of what a good partner does in some way.
That's actually not going off the rails, because statistically that's in the Princeton study. That's part of it. Having caregiver support is absolutely huge. I do want to say another thing. And as a person that has employed thousands of people, and you know, I want to make a difference, if you've watched our video, in people's lives, and I tend to want to help my employees in every which way possible. So I've been exposed to a lot of these relationships. If you are in a struggling, conflict-ridden, toxic relationship, having a child won't fix that. Now that seems obvious. If a friend came up to you and said, hey, it's going terrible with this person, and we're fighting all the time, and we just can't get it to seem work, do you think we should have a baby? It would seem obvious to you that the answer is no, but people make that choice all the time. And I would venture to say 100% of the people that are watching this video know somebody that's made that choice. And actually, before she gets to number 4, I want to say something. You know, some people have watched all our videos, they know this kind of stuff. When we talk about how well our girls turned out, I just want to say, you know, they're both in their 20s right now, but they both live on their own, completely support themselves. Our oldest, Kira, is a songwriter in Los Angeles, and she is the CEO of the Beverly Hills Music Institute. And, you know, she was the largest student contributor of the Alexandria Scholarship Fund. And actually, we'll put up a list here of charities that both Kira and my youngest daughter Leia have worked for. But she is the largest contributor ever for a student that was still in high school, because her song Wonder Girl came out and she had some income from that. And then she did a thing for a week where she raised $89,000 for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Leia is the same way.
Wounded Warriors also.
Oh yeah, she has a song called Bishops and King, and all of the proceeds go to help the Combat Social Recovery Fund. And Leia, Leia, by the time she was 22, I think I have one of her colleges here. What do I have?
St. Andrews.
St. Andrews. By the time she was 22, she had graduated from both St. Andrews in Scotland and William and Mary. So the third oldest college in Europe and the third oldest college in the United States. So, and she's doing a great job working in DC and just crushing it. More successful.
She does a lot of work for the VA, and it's really, really important. Suicide prevention and other projects that she's worked on that are super valuable and super important.
So it's not just, don't value your kid by their financial success. You could be a bad parent and rich and give them a big head start, and they could be a financial success. What kind of person they are? Are they happy? Are they functional on their own? You know, are also things that you need to consider. So let's just dive back into list number 4.
Okay. Number 4 is to understand the assignment. Your job as a great parent is to prepare your children to launch, and that means live independently, successfully, happily, contribute to society, be good citizens.
Yes, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about it. I assume that you did not get a ton of hugs growing up just because of your age bracket. I got 0.
No, I got hugs.
Oh, okay. I would think most people in my generation didn't give a lot because it just wasn't a thing. Now kids are constantly hugging their parents, and that's a really good thing. But I think that there's been an overcorrection. we would go, we're really good because we know as kids, particularly me, if your kid has a sporting event or a play or a concert and you don't go, that gets remembered. And we took an active part in all of that. But when they would be in a play that was just god-awful, we would tell them. And I would notice that no matter how bad a play is, or an orchestra concert, anything like that, they go backstage. Then they come back out and everybody gives their hugs, and every single parent tells them how amazing it is. Now, most people watching this thinks, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Except the problem is, and anybody watching this who's been an employer, as I have, can tell you that this generation does not do particularly well with constructive criticism. You should show your kids love, but telling them when they have a bowel movement that it smells like raspberries and flowers is not a good thing. They need to be, as she said, prepared to launch. When they get out in the real world, they have to function. And if they get a job and their boss says, hey, good effort there, let me show you a way that might make this work better, and then they're crushed, that's a problem.
Well, and also this is going to tie into another one of the top fives, which is honesty. So you don't want to give criticism falsely, because it's very important that they trust you, and we'll visit that one soon.
And I would also say that, if you are honest with them about the things that aren't good, when you tell them things are good, they know that you're being sincere and you're just not a parent telling. And when, also when they become adults and they're asking your advice on things, they can trust that you will be honest with them, and that's very, very important. Number three is to always follow through with what you say you're going to do. And there's two things to that, both the positive and the negative. So if you ever make a promise to your child, it's crucially important that you keep that promise. If you ever make a threat to your child about, if you do this, the punishment's going to be that, you better keep that as well, because they learn to trust in what you're going to say. And if you always follow through with whatever that is, they're going to know what to expect. If you don't follow through, if you say, I don't like to use the dinner example. This is a thing that past generations did. Now we know that maybe we shouldn't be using food in this way. Yeah.
However, in the past, it would be, if you don't eat all of your vegetables, then you're not going to have any dessert. Well, if you have a situation where your child does not finish their vegetables, but then they cry and scream and throw a fit, and you give in and give that dessert, what you've just taught them is the way to get dessert every night, or whatever it is they want, is to have a crying, screaming fit, and that they can't trust what you're going to say because you're going to cave in. So it's super important to always follow through with what you say, on the positive or the negative.
I witnessed a scene in the relatively recent future where the kids were misbehaving, and they had a play date later with the child of a friend of this parent. And the parent said, if you guys don't stop fighting, we are not going on that play date. Now, I knew instantaneously that there were no set of circumstances that would prevent them going from that play date, because it was her friend and she wanted to see the friend. I don't know whether the kids picked that up when it happened, but they did know from the scenario that Angie just described about the vegetables and dessert, that just as a general rule, the things that that parent said weren't going to be followed up on a large portion of the time. Now, this is the example that's most common and we talk about, but it can become serious when they become teenagers.
Right.
Because when they become teenagers, I know that you were never like this as a teenager, but I engaged in some risky, dangerous behavior when I was a teenager. And there needs to be the understanding that there are consequences for engaging in that behavior. That's a lot more serious than they don't eat their vegetables or desserts or something like that. So, you want to get to the point where when they're teenagers, it's a much less dangerous thing. We had a rule with our kids, no matter what, if they're in a situation where there's like an impaired driver possibility or any other situation where they can be in danger, they can call us and we will pick them up, and nothing else surrounding that situation will get them in trouble. We won't
ask, why were you at a party with underage drinking. If they call us, they say they need a ride home because everyone's drunk, that's it. We made a promise we won't pursue those things at that time.
It's not about your ego, it's about keeping your kids safe. And a couple of times that ride thing happened. Neither time was there anything that necessarily would get them in a lot of trouble, but let's say they're going over Julie's house, and then they give you a call saying they want to be picked up from Paul's house. You pick them up, bring them home. The counter of what the hell were you doing at Paul's house, that kind of thing shouldn't happen. You're setting up that situation when they're kids for when they're teenagers and becomes very dangerous.
And it's really important to start that when they're toddlers. Almost all of the stuff that we're saying is stuff that needs to be started from the jump.
And the other thing we talked about, being prepared to launch. When you get a job, I can tell you as somebody who's had a lot of people working for him, if you scream and cry and complain, that works in terms of getting a dessert that you weren't supposed to have, but it doesn't work in a place of work.
Right.
Yeah. Because employers are going to be like, hey, go home. I'm not dealing with that. So you don't want to have that learned behavior. You don't want to teach them that they can get desirable results from bad behavior. Let's move on to number 2.
Number 2 is to stress, and this is again starting from like 2 years old, the importance
I love her so much.
of honesty. I'm not sure exactly what the developmental age is where kids really start to understand what it means to tell the truth and what it means to tell a lie. But it's important to start modeling anything you want your kids to do from the moment they're born, because at some point when the brain clicks and they figure that out, and you want to have already established that positive role modeling, being honest is crucial in every relationship, and I can't stress the importance of it in your children.
Being a parent is hard. But because you have to make all these judgment calls, and nothing's more important than the judgment calls you make with your kids. And you don't want to add that immense burden of one of the judgment calls when you're sizing up a situation be, hey, is this person telling me the truth, meaning your child? You have to eliminate that. There should be a cavernous difference in disciplining children in a situation where they've been dishonest and not. They should see there is a ramp up in intensity that they just is not worth it for them. And kids make mistakes. You understand that, but mistakes that involve dishonesty are different. Let me say something, because I know I'm an intense guy. This isn't on our list, but let me address the issue of spanking. Okay, speaking of something that was completely acceptable when we were kids, and is not acceptable in a lot of cultures and communities now.
Off the rails.
I know I'm off the rails. Here's why you don't spank your kids, and it's going to come into the number 1 thing on this. Okay, so I'll use it as a transition.
Okay.
When they grow up, remember, prepared to launch. Your job is to prepare them to launch. They won't be able to achieve desired outcomes in situations with violence, with spanking, with hitting, with grabbing, with shoving. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in real life. So if you are dealing with a situation as a parent and you don't know how to deal with it and you're at your wit's end, which we understand, every parent's been at their wit's end, that doesn't mean I've tried everything else, it's time to spank, because you are setting a bad example that if they model, it's going to be a mistake, which brings us to number 1.
The number 1 rule, and of course these are in no particular order, as I mentioned earlier, of habits that are important if you're a good parent, is to model good role modeling, and that's from the jump. This is going to come into play across the board with everything from exercise to diet to how you are in your relationships with other people, to the things I mentioned earlier about being a good citizen, being a community member, worthy community member, just everything.
No child tells their parents that they look up to them or that they emulate them when they're a child. a lot of times parents that did not do a great job find out to their horror that their kids looked up to them and emulated them. Right. You don't want to be that. You do not understand the degree to which they look up to you. They're watching you. You need to be careful what you are. When you become a parent, be the kind of person that you want them to be. I'll get off my high horse here and tell you about something that bothers me. You know, one of the things that we would do is, when the kids were growing up, is we would buy a bottle of vodka during blueberry season, a bottle like Stoli, or today it'd be Tito's or whatever, and we would put blueberries in, you know, have a couple of martinis, and in the space that's left, we would put blueberries in the vodka, put it back in the freezer, and then we could have like these delicious blueberry martinis, and it looked cool to our kids, and I worry about that. My daughter Leia does a fantastic, we'll put Sip, Slay, Saute, her Instagram story. She makes these incredibly awesome drinks there, in the 20s.
Food items as well.
Yeah, and awesome food items. But when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this could be a problem. It's not a problem for them now, but I'll hurt myself if it becomes a problem.
Why it's so important to show good role modeling for your children is because we know from research that children emulate what their primary caregivers do. So if it's a parent, if your child spends most of their time with a grandparent or whatever the situation is, children imitate the behavior of their primary caregivers. That's how they learn best. So that's why if you want your child to be a good reader, you read in front of them. If you want your child to be a music maker, you make music in front of them. If you want them to
be a good person,
you make good choices in that regard. If you want them to be healthy, you show them, take them with you when they're little and you're exercising. You have a healthy diet. All of these things are things that are positive role modeling that children from birth start to absorb. And we, as I said, we know from research that they emulate and imitate what their primary caregivers do. It's an enormous, enormous responsibility.
If you're a smoker, you should quit for 1,000 reasons. Obviously, cigarette smoke in the house, that's a bad thing, whatever. But in terms of the context we're talking about, they're gonna emulate. Now, rates of smoking are going down in this country, and that's a good thing. But the majority of people under the age of 28 who are smokers, the overwhelming majority, and the largest factor all of them have in common is that their parents smoked. You don't want your kids to smoke, do you? Don't smoke. You smoking and telling them not to smoke just makes it seem dangerous and fun.
It's not do as I say, it's do as I do.
Yeah, like she said, eat, if you exercise, your kid's likely to exercise. If you eat healthy, your kid is likely to eat healthy. These are the kinds of things that if you set the example and the example is good, then your child will emulate that example. We have a lot more to say about being a parent. If you are interested in doing a live chat on Zoom or Facebook where you ask questions, you can. If you want to ask a question about a parenting issue in the comments, please do it. We answer every question that comes and respond to every comment on all of our YouTube videos. And then the other thing is, if you have an idea for a top 5 list, you can do that.
I would also ask in the comments that if anyone out there has a particularly great book that they've read about being a good parent or things to help parents, please put that in the comments below. We also just thought it would be kind of a neat experience. We were a little scared to do it, but we just asked both of our adult children to give us feedback on what we did well as parents and what we could have done better as parents. So if you're interested in that, ask that question in the comments and we will deal with those there. Luckily I wasn't devastated by anything they said, but I was really surprised by some of it as well.
It was interesting stuff and really helped this video. So
we really hope, again, this is your most important job you're ever going to have. If you choose to be a parent, there's no job that will ever be more important or more impactful. So I hope some of this was helpful for some people.
And we will see you next time on
The 4 Chains, baby.
Hey!